Salute. Knicks streets are buzzing after this big win in South Beach. The New York Knicks took care of business from a heroic Julius Randle, 43 points, buzzer beater to add. New York Knicks Nation, stand up. The streets are certainly buzzing tonight, pulling off that heat heist in South Beach. Like I said, man, what an instant classic tonight as the Knicks now go 11 games over 500, 8-game winning streak. We here, baby, right now. Hold that L, Pat. Hold that L, Jimmy. What a statement win. Man, it was tough. It was gritty. It was New York Knicks 90s style ball. Jalen Brunson went down with the ankle roll, went back to the locker room, got taped up, came out ready to roll, and we got this dub. Stand up, Knicks Nation. Shout out to the chat. Shout out wherever you're at. Let's have some fun. Chop this win up. Let's go. How we doing, fam? Knicks streets assembling tonight. South Beach represented. Man, seeing that crowd juiced up was fantastic in the arena as Julius Randle's All-NBA type season continues to roll, baby, on a 43-point piece, 20 points in the first quarter again. Crazy, just crazy stuff we are witnessing, Knicks Nation. I'm glad I've got the best chat in the biz to talk about this one tonight. And replay gang, EJ will jump in a second to chop this big win up. But man, give us your thoughts out here. Salute Kaiser. Big task with Nick Pride through and through. Yet talk to the man buzzer. IQ was crazy tonight. Man, yet 6th man of the year type year. We've got plenty to talk about that tonight. As the Knicks award season might clean up with Brunson MIP, Randle All-NBA, Mitch All Defensive Team. We here right now. This is what sustainable winning looks like. Man, for those not around in the 90s, man, it's like we went in a time machine tonight with Doc and Marty, Back to the Future with that thing. What a crazy end to the game. Like I thought, what's Julius doing? Turn the ball over, stumbling, bumbling. But you talk about serendipity in the words of Clyde. That's just exactly what this season has been. That last 30 seconds exemplified the season, man. We started slow and we got hot right now. As you see Juju on screen, absolutely, killing it with this season out here, man. It's been absolutely insane as EJ's about to come through on the Knicks streets, and I'm about to bring him in, and we've got plenty to talk about tonight. EJ,
Yo,
what a win. What a
what's
win,
going
fam.
on? What's going on, fam? What's going on, CT? What's going on, Knicks Bugs Nation? Whoa, what a win. Listen, this was crazy. I take the glasses off for that. I don't even know, man. I'm going to send my bill, my medical bill, my doctor's bill to one Penn Station because the Knicks and the amount of ups and downs, thrills a minute is crazy. But what a wonderful, wonderful win tonight. Sorry, Knicks Buzz, I was late. Some things happening, but nevertheless, an exciting Friday night. CT.
Man, EJ. 90s, I said we went back in a time machine
Oh yeah.
tonight.
Oh yeah.
EJ, it was gritty, man. Knicks Warriors. I'm going to call them Warriors. This team standing up. This was a battle, like physical. Refs weren't calling a lot of hits. Josh Hart got elbowed in the face.
Yeah.
Bam tried to flop on that
Yeah.
Randle back down. What a shot that fadeaway foul and one was as well.
Listen, one of the things that sometimes we forget in Knicks fandom or just in basketball fandom is that sports are not just a physical endeavor. It's also a mental endeavor and an emotional endeavor. So like this was a throwback. This was a CT and I texted before the game, and one of the things I said to him was like, listen, this is a make or break game for the Heat. What I should have said is that it's also, and obviously I couldn't predict this, but this is also going to be a huge game for the Knicks in terms of really testing their mental fortitude and really in testing their emotional fortitude. There's something that starts to happen. Every team can go through a 2, 3, 4 game winning streak. But what happens when you're on a 6, 7, 8 game winning streak and it's not going to be a blowout? It's not going to be an easy game. You thought you were going to blow a team out, and they say, "Nope, we're back, we're in it." What happens when it's only coming down to like 1 or 2 possessions? And so this game was really, hopefully we look back at this game, whether it's this season or next season, and we say that this was really a character building kind of win. So kudos to Julius, kudos to can we just give it up for Jalen Brunson as well too? Really just getting shellacked, really getting pushed all over the floor, tweaking his ankle, but the kind of resolve he had, that guys is that's where like the physical excellence, and then now moving into the idea of mental excellence and emotional excellence and character. This is something that we're seeing all these elements coalesce around this team.
Yeah, you said it, man. I'm running out of dialogue out here in the streets. As the chat hold us down, I could feel the energy coming out, Nick's passion. Huge win. We got to start from the top. What this win means tonight, Nick's Nation and EJ, is that I was looking at the post game, and Bill and Wally and co were talking about it. Huge win now between the Heat and the Knicks. There's significant separation now with 4.5 games. So that's key. The Knicks are all but stitching up fifth. Brooklyn in sixth. The Knicks are still in fifth, but just one game back, baby, a fourth seed. What are your thoughts on that?
Listen, Jay Boogie was here last week, and props to the man, Jay Boogie. And his prediction, his aspiration, I shouldn't say prediction, his aspiration was that the Knicks did hit the fourth seed. And I am a pragmatist in my daytime life, in my professional life. I'm someone who I look at a situation. I'm like, okay, what's the most reasonable outcome of what I'm looking at? And at the time when Jay Boogie was on this call, this time, this podcast, this time last week, I thought, man, I like Jay Boogie a lot, but I don't know if fourth is realistic. There's so many things that have to change. There's so many things that have to happen, but what a difference a week makes.
Yep.
And fourth is a realistic possibility. Now, again, I'm a pragmatist. I'm a realist. Um, you know, I'm hoping for fourth. But again, just like they say in terms of basketball leads and overcoming deficits, it's one thing to chase, but then to actually overcome that particular deficit is yet another thing. But I tell you, there are some opportunities within the next stretch of games, even though this stretch of games is going to be a murderer's row of games for the Knicks. So, but you got to give it up for the resolve that they showed tonight. You got to give it up for the fact that they took on a really thorny and difficult and pesky Miami Heat team, and they rose to the challenge, particularly playing on the road. Guys, we cannot overlook that. This was a game that was down to the wire, and they won on
Yep.
the road. So kudos
Yep.
to the Knicks.
Yep. Starting to figure things out, with IQ's play being so gritty and standing up in that minutes where Brunson went down was key in the game. Heat made that run, but the Knicks stayed tough. They stayed tough. Yes, they didn't execute really well tonight. I will say, obviously the 5 second inbound play, another, flashback of the struggles earlier this season, but the Knicks fought through it, and I guess it's still isolation heavy. Like tonight is
Yeah.
quintessential what we're going to see in a playoff game. Julius Randle's heroic shot won us the game tonight. But you could say earlier in the game is when the Knicks really won this game. Started out hot, ladies and gentlemen, tonight. 37-point first quarter to 31, 34-point second quarter uh, to 25. And then, like I said, lost the third quarter, but lost the fourth as well. But the lead they built up in the first half, Julius Randle's amazing hot start. He's starting, games, in the top five best player in terms of first quarter points in the whole league now. And tonight still sealed the deal for me, EJ and chat. Tonight, Julius Randle, I feel like, is having an All NBA season.
Yeah, I think we talked about this, and I think that in the eyes, I mean, in the eyes of Knicks fans, he's definitely all NBA. There aren't any if, ands, or buts about it. I think for well over 90% of the fan base, if not higher, there's no question that Julius Randle belongs on the All NBA team. It's not even a question of if he belongs there. I think for 90% or higher of Knicks fans, it's just a question of which particular iteration of the All NBA team does he belong. Is he going to be first, second, or third? I think for the greater NBA, which tends to depreciate what the Knicks do, they tend to depreciate certain wins. They depreciate win streaks. We've seen it from time to time with people like Charles Barkley or Shaquille O'Neal. The national coverage of the Knicks, there tends to be this lag in terms of understanding the significance or of a win streak, significance of certain Knicks players. They're not viewed as being on par with other teams. However, I do think that if Julius has another 3, 4, 5 games of this magnitude, I think that there won't be that national tendency to ridicule what the Knicks do. And yeah, shout out to Jalen Brunson for being Player of the Month. This is a team to be reckoned with, and I think that we've seen the metamorphosis. We've had a chance to witness and see, and question where the team was going, but to now have this arc where we're seeing the team really become a top team, a top level team. We're aware of it. I think some people in the NBA are aware of it, but I'm just hoping and wishing that the entire NBA catches up. That being media, that being podcasts, that being
Mm.
press of all sorts, to really respect the run that the Knicks have been on recently.
Yeah, man. The 3-point shooting has just been on another level this year. But tonight, 8 of 13 from three. Talking about, no one predicted Julius, early in his career to be this effective 3-point shooting. He was pegged as a bully, barreling to the bucket early in his days with LA and the Pels. But to be putting up 8 of 13 again, you got to respect the shot. I mean, scouting report. What are these guys doing? Still leaving Julius wide open. He's going to devastate you if you continue to leave him open from three. And obviously he's put in the work, EJ. He's put in the work, and he's been in the gym shooting these shots, and he's effective at it now.
Yeah, I think in part, like I said, I think that there's what we see, and I think that there's the perception of what the league thinks of the Knicks and what they think of, for example, Julius Randle. I'll admit my perception of Julius Randle from this time last season to this point this season has shifted, has changed. But I have the benefit of watching every single Knicks game and speaking to impassioned Knicks fans just like yourself, and to beat writers and to people who follow the team. I do also think, and this is something that we did predict and we did talk about before the season even started, is Julius's game elevates not just because of his work, and his work obviously during the off season, the ability for him to reach a frame of mind where he seems to be at peace with himself. He seems to be very happy. There seems to be a bounce not just to his physical step, but the joy with which he plays with his fellow players. That Jalen Brunson hug, that for many of us in the real world it would feel uncomfortable, but almost every Twitter reaction was, every Knicks fan's feeling right now is Jalen Brunson hugging Julius Randle for a prolonged period. We can't underestimate the role of getting a Jalen Brunson also helping to elevate Julius Randle's game. Listen, one of the reasons why defenses don't know whether or not they should sag off or double Julius at the perimeter is because they also know that with just one pass from Julius to a Jalen Brunson might penetrate into the lane and cause havoc. So this is what happens when you have complementary players. And this is also when you actually make good signings. it elevates not just role players, it also elevates your top tier players as well. So, you know, kudos to Jalen Brunson, but especially kudos to Julius Randle as well.
Yeah, yeah, you mentioned it. Obviously, and also D Gons, appreciate you chat buzzing right now. Smash that like button for Knicks Nation, up 11 over 500 now, 8 game magical win streak. Josh Hart undefeated as a New York Knick. And yeah, no doubt Brunson has obviously added to the team. But for Randle, it's just another guy who allows Randle to not get, so much attention as much as last year, which has been obviously key. Um, and obviously with quickly Hart addition and nights when Barrett plays solid, he had a great start tonight. Barrett was scoring easily, getting to the cup. He seems to now start to play well against Tyler Hero, on the regular, getting to the cup. But it's just an all round, just a feel good vibe, EJ, just a great squad effort.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really like, good teams, good to great teams. What they're able to do is present some level of balance. Mediocre teams might have a good player, or they might have a player that seems to do well periodically. Like someone will have just a really good night. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that one good night transcends the team into the realm of being a good team or being a great team. In as much as Giannis is the heart of the Milwaukee Bucks, they have a core of other players that are pretty reliable. Same thing with Boston. As much as it's Jason Tatum's team,
Mm,
you can't diminish the role of Jalen Brown. You can't diminish the role of Marcus Smart and Mark Williams and such. You have players who are able to contribute in a way that when your star is unable, because of defense, because of fatigue, because of wear and tear, isn't able to present consistently, other players step up and they're able to fill in the gap, fill in the role. Listen, one of the things that we could do, and we might do this for fun later on, is we can
mm,
compare where the Knicks were in terms of roster 64 games in last year versus this year. And again, just the additions of certain players and players that complement one another. And that's the other piece too that I'm really learning for this season is that it's not always just about top talent. It's about talent that complements one another. Josh Hart's ability to just have ways of affecting the basketball game, even if he's not scoring, that cannot that cannot be underestimated. That has to be commended and
yeah,
complimented. Jalen Brunson's determination to make it back from the locker room, saying no matter what, I'm getting back to this game and I'm going to finish it. That has to be complimented. So you're seeing this on multiple levels, multiple players. Emmanuel's Quickly's dedication to, saying I'm going to improve during the offseason. How about kudos to Mitchell Robinson, who clearly got dinged up in the third quarter and says, nope, I'm sticking in this game. There's something that's happening in terms of the character of the team, not just the physicality, not just the physical ability, but the character. And I think this is why Knicks fans all over are falling head over heels in love with this particular roster.
yeah. Top to bottom, man. We big nine. We got so much love this week from the media now. Zach Lowe's pod, um,
Yep.
get up, you know, fake fans coming out of the woodwork. Max Kellerman giving us props. I mean,
Yo, can I jump on that for a second? Max Kellerman. I don't know if you peruse podcasts. I don't know if you check podcasts. I don't know if you've ever encountered Nick's Buzz. But I would strongly, strongly implore you, once you give up your fandom, you are not allowed back in the car.
yeah,
There is no room for you. How dare you imply that the Knicks are only motivated to be good if the Nets are good? That is one of the most asinine tweets I've ever seen in my life. I don't know how you became a superstar, sports icon by writing tweets that are such a dereliction of duty in that way. So I hope you see this. I hope someone clips this and sends this to him because it is insulting to think that Nets fans are only moved by what happens with Nets fans. This is a Knicks town well before Brooklyn became Brooklyn, and it will be a Knicks town, long after the Nets have relocated to whatever destination the NBA offices in Manhattan have decided. You can tweet me at EJ underscore Blanchard, Mr. Kellerman. Thank you, a rational Knicks fan.
Exclamation point. Drop the mic. And appreciate Luke in the chat buzzing right now. The Arkansas Nets is where they might end up. But they happen to beat the Celtics tonight. I haven't seen that, but I'm just basking in this big 90s win in the standings tonight. The Knicks are absolutely surging. One of the best teams in the NBA right now. Randall's going to get more love. Brunson's going to get more national love tonight. It's time for the haters to wake up, right? The Knicks for clicks era is over, right? We're here to dominate, devastate right now. And in terms of the award season, it could be a huge year. I feel like Julius Randle put a stamp on All NBA tonight. MIP for Brunson. Six man quickly. He's getting more momentum. And Mitchell Robinson, EJ, what can you say? All defensive team, 100%.
Dude, I'm gonna make a statement that I thought that I was gonna save for later, but I'll say it because it might be a hot take, but I'll just share it right now. The way that things seem to be coming together, the Knicks have the possibility, if they do well this season, and again, championship, most likely not going to occur. But if the Knicks win a championship within the next 3 years, the Knicks have the ability to. The Knicks are already a global team, but they have the ability, if with just one championship, to become Lakers like in terms of global reach, in terms of being a national team. Sort of like how Golden State went from it being one of those teams that you wondered like who actually goes to see a Golden State game, to now being like one of those teams where you see its jerseys all over the place. I really think in the 21st century with Twitter, with all these podcasts, if the Knicks win one championship, the entire narrative of who the Knicks are and who they've been the past 40 or 50 years can be rewritten. And I'm excited that we might be at the precipice of this new chapter of what the Knicks might be. And this is going to be really exciting. It's going to be fascinating to see people like Max Kellerman, people like Michael Rappaport, people who've Stephen A. Smith, people who've not necessarily been committed to the struggles of being a Knicks fan, try to worm their way back into the new version, the new narrative that will be written if the Knicks win or contend or relive the glory days of the 1990s and become a powerhouse of the NBA.
Yep. I love that we're a powerhouse,
Yeah.
EJ. And yeah, it's time to throw all rationality out the window. Like Nye said, we win in the chip this year. Just for one night, we can
Just for one
dream.
night.
Let's
One night.
Yeah, we all buzzing after this. And like Kaiser says, we finish well. Donovan could be coming. But in terms of the Cleveland Knicks matchup, potentially Cleveland Knicks Philly matchup, Zach Lowe was saying on his pod he could see the Knicks beating Cleveland. He could see the Knicks beating Philly. So
Yeah.
this
Wow.
this
Wow.
isn't like now. This isn't now like a world where we might compete. This is where like people see a pathway for us to win.
That's what I mean about the narrative of who the Knicks are, and where they're going. We might be at like the first or second or third steps of the Knicks becoming one of those teams that, all of a sudden every 2 weeks they're on TNT. Every week they're on ESPN. I mean, guys, think about like certain teams. Like when you think of the NBA schedule coming out, you just know they're going to be on national TV 10, 15, 20 times. The Golden States, the Milwaukee's. And here's the thing, it's been a long time. It's been a long time since the Knicks have been that. And we've almost never been that in this new age of the NBA. The NBA with Twitter, the NBA with social media, the NBA that has contracts globally. And so, think about where CT is, Think about what that would mean for the Knicks fan base, growing globally, growing exponentially. The pride we will all have wearing our Knicks gear because of what might be happening right now, where people are starting to turn the corner and figuring, instead of us having conversations about how are the Knicks going to lose, we might start having conversations in the days, weeks, months, and years to come as to how we expect for the Knicks to win. And it's been a long
Mhm.
time since that's been the expectation. And this says a lot. Really says a lot.
It does, yeah. Leon Rose, got to give him credit too. Tibbs and the last show I gave a little bit more shine to, but Leon could seriously be getting some executive consideration because all the moves have hit, really. I mean, he had a down year, no doubt, with the Burks, Noel, Rose, Fournier signings, but he's certainly cleaned things up with the draft picks, with the contracts of Brunson, the contracts of Randle, and pulling off the right trade for Josh Hart. What a start. Um, 8-0. I said this thing could get 10-0. Josh Hart. He's trying to deflect things on Twitter. I'm seeing Josh. He's like, when we were 6-0, he was like, please, it's not about me. It's about the team. But I think this is going to make him feel good. This is what he wanted.
Yeah, I mean, how often do we see someone be traded in any sport? How often do we see a trade where it just seems like it's a seamless fit? I like think about like how like when the trade went down. And again, I'm not trying to like cause anything, but like I'm just I just love history. But when the trade went down, how many people were like, well, watch Cam explode? You know, I've not heard almost any Cam chatter in
Oh,
Knicks sphere or in the Knicks space because of how well the fit has been with Josh Hart and the fact that we've now won this 8 game winning streak. We've been on this 8 game winning streak. The Cam conversation has subsided greatly. And because again, like I hope that when CT and I are speaking, or when CT is doing solo shows, we're presenting intelligent Knicks conversation. And one of the things that we've been talking about recently is how do players complement one another? How does fit? How do you arrive at the point where you see fit taking place on the roster, and having players that genuinely, even if it's at the expense of their own minutes, having players that enjoy playing with one another. And I think that's another major win that we're seeing is that I don't really feel as if there's a player in the locker room right now, or it doesn't appear as if there's a player in the locker room right now that has any animus or anger towards another player on the team, which is feels great, which really feels great.
mm. Yeah, salute Will, salute chat, Queen's Place, nice in the building, Luke, Ryan, we're buzzing tonight. And yeah, on the Josh Hart trade, man, not just, and we'll talk more about Brunson signing. Is that the best, one of the best free agent signings in history? What Charles Barkley's talked about. That'll be the next topic. But yeah, in terms of the mid-season trade, I mean, man, and also credit to Leon. I got to include this. He traded the right pick because we still own the Dallas Mavericks selection, which is in like number 17, and our pick is like in it's going down and down as it's like 23 right now. So as the Luca Kyrie pairing continues to get a slow start, the Knicks are sitting pretty with the Josh Hart move. Pulled in a key rebound tonight, like EJ said, was stuffing the stat sheet with 7 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals, and a block from a guard, plus 16, only 5 points. But who cares?
And 2 elbows to the face. You know what I mean? But that's what we mean in terms of like the intangibles. Like that's the word I used to hear back in the day when I was a huge fan of the '90s Knicks. Whether how many times wins would occur because of a Charles Oakley rebound and an outlet pass, the perfect outlet pass. Those are the little intangibles that may not necessarily show up in a stat sheet, but they're huge because they were the right play at the right time. It was the right person making the right decision at that time. It was the person not giving up on a play. It was the person who said, "Okay, coach, I don't care what you say. Keep me in. I know I'm banged up right now, but I can ice that later." That's why there's icy hot. That's why there's aspartame. That's why there's Bengay. There's all these creams and ointments that will do after. That's why they're like 15 masseuses. Um,
Man,
but that's why like you get a Josh Hart because again, I think with Cam, a lot of us fell in love with his scoring ability, but with Josh Hart, and again, not this is not a knock on Cam. What I'm talking about is complementing the roster as presently constructed. What Josh Hart is able to do, even if he's not getting you 15 points a night or 20 points a night, the other stuff he does, they are conducive to allowing us to have the opportunity to win the games that we've played in the past 3 weeks.
yeah. Hustle plays, sacrifice as well. Talk about let's talk about the '90s Knicks. Charles Oakley, Anthony Mace, in your
Okay.
face,
Derek Harper.
Chris Childs, yep, Derek Harper. Those kind of guys were unsung heroes because they did what New York fans want, on the court. They weren't the ones to put the ball in the bucket, but they were there to help the team win. And boy, did they help the team win. Josh Hart quickly, and Grimes defense, Mitchell Robinson. These guys don't get enough love, you know.
Yeah, yeah, because you know what it is that in a world, in a world of fantasy sports, in a world where we're now a generation into how many of us watching ESPN and watching like the 60-second or 90-second version of the game, where they cut the clips and we're seeing like the highlight shows, and we're seeing what were the most highlight worthy dunks or the most highlight worthy 3-point shots. Listen, Mitch will almost never make a highlight for a 3-point shot or like a game-winning buzzer shot, but the stuff that he's doing is equally as important as Julius hitting 43 tonight. Those blocks, the fact that he wasn't in foul trouble again for the majority of the night, the fact that he could be a defensive presence and defensive anchor, even though we saw him get nicked up, that is so critically important. So again, I know I fall into the trap too, where I'm watching YouTube, I'm on Instagram or Twitter, and we see the highlight plays. But again, those other hustle plays,
Mm.
those box outs that can lead to someone like a Kevin Love getting tip-in shots. But if you properly execute it where you're boxing people out, you properly execute it so that you're getting those 50-50 balls, that's what allows for a team like this to win a 2-point game, those plays. So kudos to Mitch, kudos to, Emmanuel Quickly, kudos to Josh Hart. Players who often don't get the shine, but Hartenstein, solid minutes, you know, doing what needs to be done. And again, it's not sexy all the time, but it's necessary.
Mm. You know what? I'm glad you actually hit right on the timely buzzer. When I was just looking at the box score, we had so many guys in the minus one from Brunson, Barrett, and Grimes each, minus 23 tonight from Mitch, which is unbelievable. But Hartenstein plus 22. So in 15 minutes. So that's a huge swing point. Obviously, when Brunson went down, they made that huge run. But Hart plus 16, Hartenstein with plus 22 tonight. Toppin was a plus one in his 12 minutes. So I think it's our depth that's setting us apart because, times when Brunson and Randle got to sit and they need to sit. Brunson only played 35 tonight, Randle 36. But to beat a quality team, you need depth to step up. And our bench stepped up. Josh Hart playing starting minutes tonight, 33. EJ, we talked about his stat sheet. But yeah, Quickly's 22 minutes was vital. He was hitting crazy amount of shots, 5 of 9 from deep.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is too is that when players go down, I mean, I think that's the other thing that we have to take away from this game is we can't forget that when it looked as if we were going to have a chance to blow this team out, our two key two key elements or two key aspects of our rotation, they had noticeable injuries. And I'm going to be interested to see what the final reports are going to be like. In terms of them getting checked out. You know, did did Jalen Brunson sprain his ankle? Um, Obviously, Mitch bumped knees or knocked knees with someone else, and so what the ramifications are going to be of that. But when we look at what that impact on the game, Mitch being in the negative, listen, I'll take that because look what he had to play through. Same thing with Jalen Brunson. Look what he had to go through. Those were difficult minutes, and also, a lot of times when we're doing analysis in the sports world, we look at our local team and we talk a lot from the perspective of the local team. Let's also look at the Miami Heat. They're not meeting the expectations that some had given them at the beginning of the season, but they're still a very tough team. They're still a kind of team that when their defense is on, their defense is really difficult. I mean, there were plays and sets where not only were they able to rotate to Randle and to double team him at the beginning of his possession or at the beginning of his moves, they were also able to do it so that they double teamed him, but also were able to rotate very quickly to Jalen Brunson. So this is not like an average basketball team. Even though they're not having as much success as they had last year, this is still a pretty good defensive team. In as
Yep.
much as they lack the talent, the scoring talent that they may need to be real contenders. So again, this was a real gutty, a real effort that is worthy of being complimented. So kudos to the squad.
Yeah, you mentioned their grittiness. Jimmy Butler was, on one leg tonight. He was questionable, and he gave forth a colossal effort trying to will his team. But that's the story for me where the Heat are at, and that's why I predicted them to slide because I looked at Jimmy and I'm like, it starts and ends with Jimmy. He's getting older. He's got a lot of mileage over the last 3, 4 seasons. Who else is stepping up? Tyler Hero's nice. Bam Adebayo's kind of an all-star, but they're just missing that other piece. That's why you're seeing the New York Knicks now 4.5 above them. And tonight, just off the back of your comment about their quality defense, for 11 turnovers tonight, again, I commend the Knicks taking care of the ball more. Aside from that final turnover late, 11 turnovers to 12 for the Heat. That was a great story stat from tonight. The Knicks also won the fast break points again, doubled, almost doubled the fast break points, 23-14. So getting up and down with Josh Hart again, and quickly getting easier buckets.
Yeah, you know what? You brought something up you were one of the people who talked about how you didn't have as much faith in the Heat as a lot of experts and people who prognosticate and predict records. There's something that's really interesting when you compare the Heat versus the Knicks because a lot of people have the Heat having a better record than the Knicks. Um, One of the things that we're seeing is that a lot of the Heat players, like the Heat core, whether it be a Bam Adebayo, whether it be a Jimmy Butler, whether it be a Kyle Lowry, what really separates their roster from our roster at this particular point is that it seems as if most of the Heat core have hit the very top of their ceilings. In terms of what Jimmy Butler can be or what he's going to be, it pretty much seems as if he's hit the ceiling of what he is as an NBA player. Again, this is not any shade. This is not me knocking him. This is just true. Like, okay, this is who Jimmy Butler is as a
Yep.
player. With regards to Bam Adebayo, yes, All Star, but he seems to be maximizing pretty much where he's going to be. So you seem to have a plateau of several of their core players, Butler, Adebayo, um, Lowry. Can Hero hit another gear? Perhaps, or the rest of that roster and the way it's constructed, they've pretty much topped out in terms of where the talent can go. You can improve a team by acquiring more talent, or you can improve a team by the talent within your organization improving on their own. I think that's one of the big differences between the Heat and the Knicks, and I think that's one of the things that the national audience may have missed is they did not
Mm.
expect for Jalen Brunson to not only be Jalen Brunson, but to improve upon what
Yeah.
he is. So like the Jalen Brunson from last season and the Jalen Brunson this season, They're not the
Yeah.
same player. He's grown. Julius Randle, he took a step back. Not only has he back to what he was, he's surpassed what he was. Emmanuel quickly took a leap. Quentin Grimes, I think we're all of the mind that he hasn't quite hit where we expected him to be, but nevertheless, he also has taken a step. Um, there are so many players on the Knicks who've taken a step that when you compare the Knicks versus the Heat, it makes sense that they're now starting to flip in terms of positions, and we're looking at the Knicks optimistically. Whereas, this might be the last hurrah for this iteration of the Heat.
Yeah, I could see that too. And I think just off the great point you made, they've kind of ran out of luck. Remember we were always fan base looking at other teams like, man, they hit on that guy. Where did they get that guy from? Duncan Robinson, I allude to. That looked nice for a few seasons. Now where's Duncan Robinson? The Knicks are hitting on guys like Quickly, Grimes, and all of that. And other teams are the ones going, man, where did the Knicks find these cats? And also they ran out of luck with Kyle Lowry, and they ran out of luck with Oladipo. I think those were the two moves they were hoping would put them over the top.
Well, that's what happens when you start to reach this point where you've invested your money in certain players and they become sort of the cornerstones of the cap, not just of your team, but the cap. And you have to start complementing them with players who are past their prime, who are not ideal complements to your core, or you're just hoping that someone recaptures, the glory of yesteryear. I mean, it doesn't take that much for us as Knicks fans to see what happened to us last year with regards to Kemba Walker. We were hoping, we were praying, we were like, please, um, we hope he can reclaim the glory from 2 seasons ago. But in the NBA, it's not often that a player that's kind of peaked in terms of talent will find a second gear and be able to relive that glory or even surpass it. So, I think the Heat are almost a cautionary tale for the Knicks and for the Knicks management to suggest, okay, we're doing well, we seem to be on an upward trajectory, but we can't rest on our laurels. We have to really, really be intelligent as to how we allocate future money because we might be a piece away, but one poor piece decision can really set the organization back and really lose a lot of the goodwill that they've seemed to have captured and gained in this particular season, or from this particular season, rather.
Yeah, yeah, man, intelligent moves. And now's the time to ask everybody. Charles Barkley said, Jalen Brunson move could be one of the best free agent pickups in history. He can't think of one, on the top of his mind. I'm more sort of maybe extending that to, is this the best transaction in the Knicks, one of the best transactions in the Knicks history alone?
That would make like a great conversation at some point because that's something that is worthy of like really going
Mm.
back into the history books. Off the top of my head, and my lived experience is really from like the early 90s on. Obviously, I have vague understandings and vague recollections of the mid 80s. um, Again, I would have to read about some of the transactions because when you go back to the 70s, obviously that's where we won our championships: 70, 71, 72, 73. So like those that squad you have to kind of treat separately. But in terms of signings, um, in terms of signings in the past 40 years, it would be really, really difficult to think of a signing that's been as good as Jalen Brunson. Um, One that comes to mind really quickly is Allen Houston, and obviously Allen Houston was instrumentally important for that '99 run, but that contract ended, um, well, that career ended disastrously, and so much so that we had the Allen Houston rule. So that kind of places it in another category. But for now, I can't actually think of a signing um, that has had this much of an impact. I think, yeah, I really can't. I would have to go back to the '70s Knicks and to revisit that roster to see if there's a move in that from that particular generation. But for the ones that I've seen, no, I can't think of one.
Mm, me too. Definitely the best free agent signing in terms of age is the biggest thing. The talent. We hit a guy on the upswing right at that point where he was ready to take that leap, and he just signed with us, and he's 26, 27, and yeah, he could be our starting point guard hopefully for the next 7, 8 years plus, and lead us to many title, deep playoff runs. And just there, they hit on that situation where, even Barkley said himself, EJ, that no one quite expected Brunson to be this good. Definitely not.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. Now that we have a chance to really, like, I've had a chance to start thinking about it. It kind of makes
Mm,
sense that for Knicks fans who, like, both you and I, we are Knicks fans since, like, really the '90s. Um, One of the reasons why we're probably struggling to think of other signings is that if you really think post, like, '98, '99, like where they traded Patrick Ewing to Seattle. And if you're young in the chat, check that out. Check out Patrick Ewing, one of the best, if not the best, Knicks player of all time. But after 1999, where they traded him, the Knicks were almost always in salary cap hell. So how would the Knicks have had the the financial ability to sign a player outright? Um, so that's probably why we're struggling to think of someone
mm,
from the late '90s to present that they were able to sign. Um, because again, like those Howard Isley trades, the Shandon Anderson, the Clarence Weatherspoons, even to the Eddie Curry deal, the Steve Francis, like the last 20 years, really prior to 2010, there were so many bad contracts that I think for about a 20-year period, it was how are we going to get out of salary cap hell? It's only really since Donnie Walsh where there's been more of a concerted effort, and even like during the Steve Mills era, like for as much as like we had issues with Steve Mills and Phil Jackson, they may have made mistakes in terms of drafting, but they were generally very good about not killing the Knicks cap. Um, so yeah, so
yeah,
it's really that's probably why we're struggling to figure out a free agent signings because there
yeah.
was like 20 years they couldn't sign anyone.
And yeah, yeah, you just got to consider the whole transaction too. The contract we got him on. I mean, to get Carmelo Anthony, you don't just consider Carmelo the talent. You got to consider everything we gave up and where the franchise was at the end of the signing. Jalen Brunson comes in. I like Lynn salutes note about Earl, Dave. You got to go back to the '70s. I think if there's been a better acquisition, obviously those guys helped us win a chip, so that's at the very top. Um, but in terms of just that one player's impact, I think so far, yeah, Brunson looks the goods. I cannot wait, and I've got to get myself a jersey. Salute Nice has got to get me a second IQ jersey. Uh, IQ's getting so much love now. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's funny that Lynn said that. Like, it's like if you think about the Knicks have a very long history, but we don't have a long history of championships. And so, when we go to that question of what's been the best free agent signing, the only place you can really go, is you have to go back to the '70s, and because like every other time period, you know, the salary cap is almost always served as an impediment and really lessened or limited the amount of success that we could actually have because there was such bad management. Um, Especially towards the late '90s. People like Scott Layden. I mean, some of those deals. The Isaiah Thomas handling of the cap was problematic in contracts that were handed out.
Yeah.
Um, it definitely won't be the Joakim Noah signing. Thanks, Phil Jackson, for that. Um, but
But
yeah, probably the
yeah,
'70s.
Degon's great point too, though. But Julius, maybe we don't need to go back that far. We have both of them, the two the two best pickups, and also it just hit me right now like a bolt of lightning that when we missed out on KD and Kyrie, what was the next transaction we made?
Jr.
Yep, and then he's here now, balling out, maybe a second All NBA team, owning New York. And where are those other two? So, and then the Knicks were clowned again by Max Kellerman saying Julius Randle was a nice complementary, so a nice consolation. Well, it's not looking like a consolation now.
Well, here's the thing. Again, it's that's why, like, this ability for, like, the national media people, and that's the other thing too, is like, I think sometimes, we as Knicks fans, we don't necessarily remember or understand how national media works versus local media. People like Max Kellerman, even though they
Mm,
had their start in New York, they only, like, kind of, drop in every now and again to watch Knicks games. They're not like you, they're
yeah,
not like me, they're not like
facts.
the people on this chat who watch every single game. Some of us, we watch games multiple times. We watch games in our free time. We watch podcasts. Like, these guys, like some of these guys, like Max Kellerman, are not doing that level of work. So their commentary, in as much as they're insulting, take it with a grain of salt. But at the same time, I do think that we might be entering into a period where the Max Kellermans of the world, they're going to have to do what they do best. They're going to have to pretend as if they never said what they said, because the Knicks might be turning a corner, and it's going to be hard to make jokes about them if they're winning 45 games, if they're winning 50 games, if they're winning playoff rounds, if they're getting into the second round of the playoffs. If players of import, if players with, like, who are top 20 players decide, hey, I want to sign with the Knicks, all of a sudden the Max Kellermans are going to pretend, oh, I never said what I said, even though we all have the receipts. So don't worry, Knicks fans. I have a feeling it's going to happen.
Yep. And EJ, what are your thoughts on the arena, the crowd tonight? We heard "Let's Go Knicks" louder than I've ever heard it on South Beach, Florida. How good did that make you guys feel?
Bro. But that's what we were talking about last week. We talked about this with Jay Bookie. We said how the Knicks have this ability to, Knicks fans are everywhere. They really, like, if you think about not just the fact that the Knicks have a long history, but New Yorkers move
Mm,
everywhere. People not only move to New York, people move from New York. And what do? You take your fandom with you. I'm sorry, like, I know a lot of people who are New York, New Jersey, former New York, New Jersey residents who've moved to places like Miami, who've moved to places like Orlando, who've moved to Atlanta, and sorry, they're not going to be Hawks fans. They're not going to be Orlando fans. I don't even know if people in Orlando realize that there might actually be a basketball team there sometimes. People in South Beach, listen, there's a lot to do in South Beach. So that's why I said what I said about the Knicks, perhaps in the next 2, 3 years, really growing their global footprint. Because, listen, there are not that many teams that when they go into another arena, you start to hear their fans really making their presence felt. That excited me tonight. Like, the fact that the Knicks fans were really in that particular arena making their presence felt. And that's not going to be that's not going if this continues, that won't be the only arena. I can easily see Charlotte. I think, no, I think we
yep.
play Charlotte at home. But, hypothetically, if we were playing in Charlotte, there are a lot of Knicks fans in North Carolina. There are a lot of
Cool.
people who moved to North Carolina. So, like, all over the country, like, this might become more and more the trend. This might become more and
Yep.
more the phenomenon where Knicks fans are going to show up all over the country.
Yep. And next, I've got to shout out all the fans, all the loyalist diehards from day one that predicted, took the over. I predicted 45. We're already at 38 wins. Like Luke said, we've surpassed or matched last season's total, and there's something like 17 games remaining. Yeah, 45 wins. I was not clowned, but I was kind of like, oh, that's optimistic. But I'm like, man, we're about to surpass that, man. 50 burger, EJ, is a real chance.
Dude, bro, I was the one who said 42 and 40. Again, like, I'm
Yeah.
pragmatic, I'm practical, I'm, like, measured, and so I have no problem eating that and saying, like, listen, I'll proudly say, like, listen, I'll take a great season out of this team, because what that also does is that is a signal to the rest of the NBA and players who are dissatisfied with where they are right now. They might be dissatisfied with the coach, and all of a sudden you start to have more options. And instead of players using the Knicks as a way to leverage their contracts with other teams, the Knicks might become a destination. And all we need is one transcendent talent to really now start to have championship conversations. Um, and so I know a lot of people and we've had these conversations on Nick's Twitter and people who are in the chats from our various podcasts who've raised the question as to whether or not we should tank. I'll even throw it back to you guys. How does it feel right now to be witness and to be party to the second 8 game winning streak of the season? Which feels better? A second 8 game winning streak right now, or if we were having an 8 game losing streak? I don't know about you guys. I enjoy this. I enjoy this. This is great. It makes it great watching the season. It makes it great watching this team. Um, I enjoy this, and I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure most Knicks fans,
Oh,
even if you started the season saying we should tank, it's really
yeah.
hard for you to say it right now.
We're like a we're playing like a modernized version of the 90s team, which people loved, but we've taken the DNA out of that 90s team and we've modernized that with a new upgrade. I'm talking guys like Quickly, Hart, Grimes that defend, Deuce, toughness with and Julius and Brunson with that toughness and Mitch. So it's toughness, it's defense, it's a bit of two-way play. We got 3-point shooters now. Man, I mean, I'm happy to eat crow, but yeah, I slept on this team as well. Even at 45, I didn't think that we could be this good 3-point shooting team alone. In terms of an offense, Tom Thibodeau was called a dinosaur, and his offense couldn't be any decent. I mean, we don't even have a bona fide All NBA superstar at this point, and we have one of the best offenses in the league.
And what makes it really cool is that it's happening in a timely manner. So like again, CT says this all the time. I've now made this into a joke, that every season has a mind of its own. You know, we, I joked about this, and I said this preseason. I said like, well, and check it out. It's actually the receipts are there.
Yep.
When we were talked about different teams, and we are having a breakdown of the Eastern Conference. I only considered Boston and Milwaukee to be upper tier teams, and when we have the conversation about teams like the Nets, we're like, well, we don't know what they're going to be because we're just coming off of KD demanding a trade, and obviously now 60 games later, look at the difference between the Nets of July slash August versus the Nets of March of 2023. And we can do that team after team after team. So while Charlotte has lost LaMelo, while Atlanta has had to fire a coach and had a pretty solid hiring. I think Quinn Snyder's a pretty good coach and maybe will
Mm.
work wonders in Atlanta. But
Yep.
they had to wait 60 games to do that. Um, Orlando is still a very young team. Detroit is a very young team. So, and the Nets have become what they've become, and Chicago is in free fall. Um, that bodes well for us. You not only win the games that you're playing, but you win games that you're playing while other teams are doing what they're doing. So I think this might open up a lane for the Knicks and also open up a lane for the Knicks to be a serious contender for top tier talent, in ways that we may not have considered before.
Yeah, grinding it out, tough games. I think those tough losses help this team grow as well. Take their lumps early and now be playoff hard and ready, tested late in the season. EJ in chat, I feel like in a deep playoff series now. Like I said, we got media guys thinking that we can win a tough series. That's a step. Before we were like, oh, could we steal a game or two from this team? Now we're like, we're built to actually win a playoff series 100% this year.
Yeah, I mean, when I do think that there's growth that's happening. And the other thing too, and like I'm debating my first jersey in a while too, and I'm trying to figure out who's going to be. But as we're having these conversations with regards to the playoffs. Like, we went from early in the year, preseason, oh, playing. This is a play-in team. And about a month ago, we were like, oh, they should be a seventh, sixth seed. And now we're having conversations about, well, not only should they make the playoffs, but there's the possibility that they should do, they might win a round. Here's where, again, that conversation about Jalen Brunson is so critically important. Everyone, who's the person who has the most significant playoff experience in terms of roster? Jalen Brunson.
Yep.
You, if you can buy experience, which is also what we got with him, you get it. And I think that that's where we're going to see, like, there's something about like that signing. It was so good on so many levels that, yeah, you know what, maybe Leon does deserve credit for that signing, even if it was listen, that second round draft pick.
I'll I'll
Oh well.
deliver that second round pick to the team personally.
Yeah,
uh,
I'll pay for a
you,
ticket. Yeah.
you could buy second round picks now. You see teams trade out of them. The Knicks trade out of picks too and move back and
Dude, they're trading
all of
five
that
picks.
stuff.
They're trading five second round picks for one person.
Like, yeah, facts they are. Um, um, yeah, Embiid is that Lynn's question. In terms of living in this moment, who could be a dude if we bring in that could take us to that next step? It's Embiid because he's another star, but he gives you what Mitch gives you. I'm not saying I want to replace Mitch in that way. I'm not disrespecting Mitch, but he's just a souped up version of Mitch in terms of um, defensively. He can hold us down, and he's a superstar on the offensive side. So I guess yeah, another two-way player to add to this team, I think would be enough to get us to the second, third round and contending.
And also, like, it has to be the person with the right, like, mental makeup. Like, there are players who are incredibly talented, but they don't have that dog in them to want to lead and to want to have the ball and to
Mm.
want to really win. Embiid is one of those players that anytime you hear him speak about the game, he's someone who's like, listen, I like having fun, I like having a good time, I'm funny, I like to troll people, but I like to win. And so that's the thing about him that um, I like about him. Now, I don't know how plausible, I don't know how realistic it is to get him if he were ever to be available, but that Embiid is
Mm.
the type of player, like, if you were to compare like Embiid versus Cat,
Oh
Embiid all day.
yeah,
Because, like, again, I'm not Cat's, I'm not in Cat's family or anything like that, but I don't hear Cat discuss the game in the way that Embiid discusses the game. And where we are right now, that makeup and that being complementary of one another is so important right now.
yep. Salute to the chat, the best chat in the biz. Streets are buzzing with EJ smashing that like button. Lots to look forward to for this season, right? And I think this team, whether or not it's Embiid or not, we got so much time because we're building on a timeline that's the best timeline I've seen, as being a fan in over 30 years because we have our two guys that aren't even at their primes yet in terms of age. And we can be solid like we're seeing tonight in this season for 5+ years. And surely during at some point during those few years, someone's going to look at the Knicks and say, "Oh, I'm going to be that next guy to join." So all we got to do is just stand pat, not get crazy, not give up the farm just yet, and I think someone's going to come.
Yeah, no, someone definitely has to come. I mean, at some point, um, because the other thing is too is, like, every time, at least in the last 10 years, since, I mean, here's a perfect Melo. Melo wanted to come to the Knicks. That was his number one priority. He wanted to come to the
Yep.
Knicks. Now, obviously, it was clear that he was willing to play for Brooklyn if he had to, but Melo was at the time in 2010, I remember it very well. Melo was a clear top 10 player. He was an all world offensive talent. And now here's the thing, the roster, and I don't want to get into a fight about this, but the roster that the Knicks had in 2010 does not compare to the roster that exists today. Obviously, the game is somewhat different,
Yeah.
but you know, I only use Melo as an example to suggest that New York is a place that some players do want to come to. It's just a question of ensuring how do we get that player in a way that ensures stability, ensures that each piece complements one another. Because one of the great failures of acquiring Melo is not only did we kind of gut the roster in that particular season, we never surrounded him with the right players. So that's really going to be the next task for the front office, is that if and when a player says, I want to play for the Knicks, one, is it the right player?
Yeah.
Two, is the player attainable without destroying your roster? And three, will you leave yourself enough maneuverability to be able to complement that player's talents?
Yes, exactly. Facts. Uh, in terms of like Nice has said in the chat, imagine IQ at an older age, Grimes' ceiling, we don't even know what that's going to be. So for me, holding on to these cats is key. But if we do got to give up people to get that next guy in, it's got to be the right transaction. Like EJ said, it's got to be the right thing. But the great thing is we have these guys under cost control. So we're sitting in a position now where we've not been in before. We have leverage. Talk about not having leverage was with Melo. I mean, we really had leverage, but we acted like we didn't have leverage. And, he didn't help the situation, but that's a story for another day. Of course, we did what we had to do to get the star in here. But right now, we signed our two stars via free agency. And that's what I've always wanted as a New York Knicks fan. I don't care about trades so much. To get ahead, you've got to either draft your star or you've got to sign one as a free agent so that you're not giving up the farm and you have a head start when you need to make that all in move.
Especially when you sign them from reasonable contracts. Like, I mean, the
Yeah.
value, like, this is where we can get into really nerdy stuff, and I don't mind going here, but
And just
there's,
a second, just sorry, off Will's point. Remember, we had our Anthony Carter when we did the Mello trade. We were we were trying to make do with Ronnie Turiaf and Anthony Carter and what's his name, Sean Williams with an extra E.
with the at the end, yeah. Oh man, wow,
Chris
wow.
Copeland, 28-year-old rookie of the year, Chris Copeland. Like we were
You,
just
you,
making do. 36-year-old Pablo.
well, yeah, and I mean Pablo might be one of my favorite short-lived Knicks. Um, oh wow, yeah, wow. You really blew me. Who made that comment? Was that Will?
Yeah, yeah. Timofey Mozgov, we found him out of
Timothy
nowhere.
Mozgov? Yeah. Oh my gosh, Timothy Mozgov. He, oof. We should do an
Oh,
entire episode on Timothy Mozgov and how he blew up the NBA. Remember how the Lakers signed him or trade? What did they do? Trade for him and like several draft picks, like two draft picks. Oof. Um, but like what I was saying before, like was about how not only do we sign Jalen, not only do we sign Julius, but we sign them to contracts that you know the value of the contracts, if they continue playing on this level, let's say they don't even improve, but they continue playing at this particular level, the values of the contract only grow because these are contracts that other teams would be interested in. And I know a lot of times when we go through the comments, people are like,
mm,
EJ, why are you constantly trying to trade players? I don't necessarily want to trade players. It's the value of the player in case you need to make a deal. So let's say, for example, a top five player that says, I want to be traded to New York. Let's say that player's name is CT. If it takes a Julius to get you CT, who's a top five player, like he's LeBron in his prime, the value of that contract probably is going to match up in terms of what you have to trade for. but then it also lessens the blow of what you have to give up in terms of other capital. So maybe you don't have to give up as many draft picks. Maybe you don't have to give up as many secondary players. And so this is why I'm really proud of the Julius contract and proud of the Jalen contract is that the way they've been playing, if they continue to play that way, these are contracts that not only we're going to get great value from them in terms of their performance, but if we need to make a move, or if other players are looking at what's happening, it's attracting the necessary or the desirable kind of talent that we need to move into championship conversation.
Mm. And also, EJ, chat. Remember where we kept saying, when is, New York going to pay off, like in terms of getting a homegrown king, and we got Melo, but Brunson, who would have thought he's that guy with New York ties that has, wanted to chose New York over a good situation like Dallas. I know they messed up the bag, like Nice says, thanks to Cuban, but they tried to pay him at the end, but he still had already decided. It was New York or nowhere, and I think yeah, like New York, the roots with Rick Brunson and Jalen, that ended up getting it done.
Yeah, and I think that that's why, like, I think that we're coming to the point where if Jalen wanted New York,
Mm,
someone else is going to want New York. It's just a question of who. And like that's what makes that's like ever since like LeBron and the decision, that's really made the league even more intriguing is that, we're all playing this game of clue trying to figure out who's the next person who wants to be on the move, who's going to and how are they going to orchestrate the move. And for us as Knicks fans, like the question of, all right, are we going to be involved in the conversation? Let's not forget in the last few years, we have been in the conversation. We may not have been at the front of the conversation or at the front of the list of many of these players, but I do think like there will be, a couple of players, we don't know who, but likely um, that will want to force their way to New York in some way, shape, or form.
mm.
Like think about it this way, guys. James Harden has moved several times,
Oh,
and it's because he's willed himself to several different organizations. Ben Simmons, I want, and again, please understand what I'm saying. I don't want any part of these players. What I'm saying is that NBA players have a way of willing themselves to a particular destination if they really want to get to that particular place. I think we're getting to the point
yeah.
where someone, I mean, there are 500 NBA players, someone is going to want to will themselves to the Knicks, and it seems to be aligning. The stars seem to be aligning to make it so that maybe the right player might finally get to us.
Yep. Of course, your cap situation got to be pretty, which is decent, and our draft pick cupboards are full as well. So we really can blow people out the water if we need, for that Godfather deal, and we're not left, with the cupboards empty because we have so much depth now. Talk about Jericho Sims, Deuce McBride, not even getting minutes right now. We're deep at 9 deep. We could go 10, 11 deep. I like the pickup. Dwayne Washington Jr. was a nice pickup on a two-way dude with NBA experience, has shown he could put up points in the league, and I think that's hopefully a situation where we could develop and get something out of him, even if we need to flip him, in the future. But in terms of tonight's performances, again winning the fast break points, we built a 17-point lead. Points in the paint were 50 to 52, so that was close. But the turnovers for the Miami Heat defense to give us trouble, but only have 11 turnovers. We forced 12 turnovers. EJ, for me, this whole season has flipped based on our defensive effort.
Yeah, I mean the defense. It's funny because as I was taking notes this evening for tonight's show, one
Mm,
of the things that I remarked was wait because we saw I think we scored 71 points in the first half, and I think my comment was something to the effect of,
mm.
are we now an offensive powerhouse? Are we now an offensive juggernaut? Because I'm not used to that. I'm not used to the Knicks being a team that scores, 68, 73, and 71 points per half. Obviously, this is the new NBA where, points that come, like pennies. But the defense, though, especially when we get to the fourth quarter, that's where it's really going to be the deciding factor in terms of our success in the final stretch of these 17 games and into the playoffs. Um, the ability for our key players to really learn how to balance offensive productivity, but also still putting hands in faces and not giving up on plays. That's going to be really important. Not giving up on plays, being able to rotate and to rotate aggressively, being able to switch defenders, switch as a defender, the ability to close out on 3-point shots. Tyler Hero, you know, if the Knicks did not aggressively try to close out, all it takes is one basket, maybe two, and CT and I and everyone who's buzzing right now, we're not having this happy conversation. We're talking about, man, if only. So I think that's really going to be that should be one of
Hmm.
the focuses
Yep.
of the rest of the season is really tightening up defensive rotations. And there are a couple of players who I'm not going to call out, but we all know who they are. The effort has to be consistent from everyone, especially as we near the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, we out toughed a tough team. Actually, we got dogs finally, as I put in the chat with Josh Hart, just another guy. So many times tonight I saw him grab the rebound, push the ball up the floor, and get guys on the break. Put pressure on the defense because the defense knows Josh Hart can take it all the way to the cup. He's offensive minded, he's aggressive, but he also can pull it back, pass it out. Yeah, and quickly he's been aggressive too. He draws fouls. Imagine when Grimes gets another few years of muscle and conditioning under him. We got dogs right now. And like you said, a few dudes do need to step up with their consistency and their effort. But yeah, I like the fact that our defense is on a string, quickly switching well, gets around the pick. He's amazing at that, getting skinny. I think RJ Barrett struggles getting around the picks. If he can slim down this summer and get better at that, our defense can be top five in the league consistently.
That's actually who I was referencing.
Yeah.
That's exactly who I was referencing. There seem to be times where just getting over those screens seems to be a difficulty, and even putting up enough energy to close out on those 3-point shots, that seems to be a little bit of the issue. Actually, yeah, can you go back to that Stanley Man for a second?
Yep.
And that's another thing. The one where he talks about where Stanley talked about the free throws. That's the other thing that
Mm.
maybe we may have like overlooked because we feel so great as a result of an 8-game winning streak. Miami hits free throws. My gosh,
Mm.
my gosh, they could have actually just won this game just on the free throw line. And that's one of those things that you don't want to lose a game you could have won because you missed 4, 5 free throws. So that's the
Mm.
other, if we're nitpicking, but it's not really a nitpick, it's a legitimate concern. Um,
Yeah.
some players get calls, some players don't. The extent to which, the Knicks seem to have a tendency to complain, um, does that turn the refs off from making certain calls? Do we not get the break in terms of certain calls because to a man like the Knicks are, anytime like there's a play, there will be some sort of Nick doing this.
Yeah.
It's like that is like if there's a Knicks meme, is there's a Knicks player meme, it's this. Um, or doing this. Um, but you- I don't want our team to lose games because they miss 6, 7 free throws, especially when we get to the playoffs and games will be tight.
You're right. Yeah, that's the key. And we're making steps. I'm not saying we're going to win a playoff series immediately, but we've got a real chance where I feel good about our efforts because it's two way. It's defensive. offensively. And another way to show how much this team's grown. Remember, every year Knicks there'll be so many Knicks fans will be clamoring for a dude on the buyout market. This year it was insane. We had Will Barton, who just was waived, and nobody was even crying out for the Knicks to add a guy because we have chemistry. I never heard that a reason why a Knicks fan didn't want talent because we had chemistry.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of them last week where I said, I'm good. You
Yeah,
know, if this were 2 years ago or last year, we would have been getting a few comments with regards to Carmelo. And the last times I've been here, I don't know if the times I haven't been here, I have never seen, like, I've not seen a we should sign Carmelo response or text or comment at all. And it's in large part because of the success of the team. It's like a hey, let's not mess this up. Let's not disrupt this. So that's a positive. That's a great thing. That means that there's an upward trajectory that's taking place right now, and we should enjoy
mhm,
this for what this is. And we have to give flowers to the people who made this possible. Again, this season, the season isn't over, but I'm going to say this to UCT right now. This season has been way more enjoyable than I ever could have imagined.
that's amazing. That's what we're here for as fans. And that's saying a lot because we've actually seen a lot of cardiac finishes. We're seeing probably the worst loss in franchise history. The way it happened, not in terms of the magnitude of the loss, but the way it happened. With that, and it's a thing of the past now. We forgot about it. Basically, we let the OKC Thunder put up 145, which ain't looking so bad right now because OKC are really good. They are really good with
Yeah.
with with Shea and Giddy and Chet hasn't even played. So yeah, the NBA. You made a great point the other day. We're at a point where the NBA's talent is like at a historic level.
Yeah, and what we were talking about the last time was that, um, again, I'm a history guy, and I'm always looking for like moments and shifts in terms of models and paradigms. Um, we're at a point where the league is changing. The league is literally changing before our eyes. I can imagine a world where in the next 2 years, uh, LeBron isn't in the league anymore. Maybe like 2, 3 years.
Mm.
That draft class, that epic draft class of 2003, how many players are still in the league from that draft class? When we start taking a look at like a lot of the iconography or like a lot of the symbols or like posters of the NBA, players who were front and center 10 years ago or players who were part of that all-star team 10 years ago, most of them are retired. Most of them are now broadcasters, or somewhere, or making a check or cutting a check for doing analysis. And so this is a new league where in the next 2 years, front and center will be players like Ja. Front and center will be players like Jason Tatum. That's why the conversation piece with regards to the All Star game was really about who is going to be the next because we're in that transition point of of players and ambassadors for the game. But that also then means that the teams that we had looked at as being powerhouse teams, they're the order of the league is changing. So maybe we have entered into that period where Golden State, that team that you know during the 2000s were like, oh, it's guaranteed Golden State's going to make the finals. It's guaranteed that a Lakers led by LeBron will make it. It's been a while since we've predicted the Lakers or a LeBron-led team is going to go automatically to the championship. And so, why do I care about that? Because that perhaps opens the door for my favorite team.
Yep. Yeah, the Cavs man woke up. That loss woke us up, and we could be destined to clash, like Manchild says. Man, the Donovan Mitchell Bowl could be coming up. EJ, I know it's been a long week, and yeah, give us your thoughts before we wrap this thing up.
This is going to be an interesting game. I mean, so we have just help me out here, CT. Who's
Yep.
next? Charlotte,
It's Boston again, then
Boston,
Charlotte.
then Boston, then Charlotte.
Yeah.
Whew. Okay, so I know that a lot of us saw what happened tonight regards to the Nets and the Celtics, how the Celtics pretty much imploded and blew I believe, 28-point lead and lost to a Nets team that we all pretty much think is, they're calling it a day. When's the last time Ben Simmons has played a game? And playing a team so close to when they've last played, and experiencing a loss the way that the Celtics experience a loss, that always gives me pause. That always gives me, a little level of agita and concern. So that game, to me, it might be the trap game. So I don't. I I'm hoping we pull that game out. But two losses, two bad losses by the Celtics. Um, Maybe they have something to prove. Maybe it kicks them into gear, especially because they have an opportunity to beat a team they just recently lost to. That might be the game that trips us up. So um, Charlotte, Charlotte is Charlotte right now. Charlotte seems to be one of those teams that, if you guys saw Michael Jordan tonight, had his head down. He can't even get a dap from one of his players because the players missed it. That pretty much describes where Charlotte is going right now. They're already planning
Oh,
vacation for the summer, so they're already figuring out where they're going. Where they're going to Airbnb. But I think that Celtics game is going to really be the one for us to watch. And obviously, Sacramento is no joke. And I think we've gotten used to Sacramento being a team that was a team that you didn't have to take seriously. But again, like I said, the league is changing. We're having this where the powerful are becoming meek and the meek are becoming powerful. So playing Sacramento in Sacramento, that's another one of those games where, I will be holding on to my pillows. I will be standing up. I will be pacing around in my living room. But I do expect for them to be at least competitive. That's the expectation now. I expect for the Knicks to be competitive every single
yeah.
game. I don't expect them to go 17-0 the rest of the season, but I do expect for them to show up. I don't expect them to get
Mm,
blown out anymore. If they get blown out, there's a problem.
yeah. I could feel, yeah, you're cautiously optimistic, is like you said, and that's cool because we've seen like teams pull out big wins, unexpected wins. You got to respect your opponent. The Knicks haven't won anything yet. That's what's key. We're building up to get to the point where we're going to win things, and we're building winning habits. In the words of Tom Thibodeau, he's got this squad feeling good. As they say, the vibes are immaculate with this thing. Fred Katz said it's a locker room full of chemistry, and basically the team is buzzing, not just us. Um, Chat EJ, the team is buzzing. I like our chances against Boston. Definitely, it's going to be that next huge test because not only did we just beat them recently, they just lost to the Nets. There's a little bit of divide, I feel like, with that team since Emu Udoka left. They just haven't looked the same, and I think there's chinks in their armor. We could really get up for that game and take them, and then we might have a letdown against Charlotte. Who knows? But it's about consistency now for this team, and 45 wins is going to be a cakewalk. My prediction: I'm looking at 47 to 50 at this point.
Listen, I'm with you, brother. Um, I'm. I think this is the part of like if
Mm,
we can get. I saw someone put up, if we can take 1 out of 2, um,
yep,
you know,
exactly.
it's
Yep,
you know we
yep.
can't get too greedy, because we'll be realistic. In the NBA, anyone can be beaten, anyone can have an off night. We're starting to see little dings pile up. Every time. I'm now getting a little concerned with Jalen Brunson. It seems as if every first quarter,
Oh yeah.
he's like he's wincing, and he's like that. You know, at the start of the season, that was like we were like, yeah, look how tough he is. At this point of the season, it's like, dude, I need you to make it to the playoffs. I need you to make it to the playoffs, please. So like in terms of like winning every single game, obviously that's not in the cards. But for me, it's about how competitive are they going to be, how resilient are they going to be, and let's even face it, we know that at some point this winning streak is going to end. What's going to be the mental resilience? What's going to be the mental bounce back? after suffering that loss after the winning streak. That's going to say a lot about who they are and what they can be when it comes to the playoffs.
Yep. And a couple of things, Luke's great question. What point do you think teams will start to throw in the towel and to start look at the draft? I think it's coming up real soon.
Oh yeah.
We're seeing a team like LaMelo with an injury now, and Houston. That probably it's going to start with the really really bad teams and then work its way up to the Orlandos, the teams that can still win if they try, but they're going to stop trying, I think, really soon. And I really feel strongly now that we're going to get the fourth seed. It's going to be Cleveland possibly, but with home court as a New York Knick now, and we're going to have that pressure, a little bit of pressure, being that home team with home court. EJ, how do you feel about going into a series with home court?
I feel really good, especially because the way that the season seems to be panning out, and I would have to take a look at the current standings. We
Yep.
had this conversation. I'm forgetting with whom. It may have been with Dan Favale. We talked about this Eastern Conference preview, and we
Yeah.
broke it down into three tiers. And right now, I in the Eastern Conference, I only take about 4 or 5 teams seriously, and that would probably be Milwaukee, Celtics, 76ers, us, and Cleveland. Everyone else to me seems to be like on the lower end of the spectrum. I don't know where to put the Heat right now, but almost everyone else, it seems as if the conference is really about 5 teams. And obviously, there are two clear leaders, Milwaukee being one of them, and the Celtics to another extent. But again, like when you're talking about a field that's narrow, that narrow, and in a league where one injury can change a series, you never know. CT on mute.
I appreciate you. I was saying, yeah, let's get Brunson some rest, like you said, if we can. Quickly's more than up for the task, and so is Hart and Barrett. They could handle the rock. So tonight was scary again. We haven't touched on that so much. He didn't look like it was a season-ending injury, but it was worry that it could be like, has he pulled something? Has he strained something? What the heck's going on? The game was absolutely crazy tonight.
Yeah, and I hope that this becomes a bit of a cautionary tale for um, for Tom Thibodeau, because we are going to hit that stretch where I forget who asked the question. I'm so sorry, guys. Today's been a really hectic day, but someone asked the question. I think it may have been Will or Luke who asked the question of at what point do you think that other teams are going to start packing it up?
Yep.
At that particular point, I would hope for Tom Thibodeau, Coach Thibodeau, that he begins to intentionally decrease the minutes of a Brunson, of a Randle. Obviously there is an extent to which we're concerned with individual accolades, but it's pretty clear that Jalen Brunson is not playing at 100%. Um, you know, it's getting noticeable, and so like any minute, of a blowout game where he doesn't have to play until like 4 minutes left in the game, let's this is the part of the season where really good teams, really good organizations, they start to understand the assignment, and the assignment is let's persevere, but let's also push for the playoffs, and let's do as well as possible in the playoffs. So I'm not talking about load management. Obviously, this organization does not believe in load management. However,
Yep.
let's use sensible rotations. So if we're up by 25, if we're up by 30 against a Detroit, I really want to see Miles McBride. I really want to see, um,
Yes.
you know, whomever, Evan Fournier. I don't want to see him playing 35 minutes for that particular game.
Yeah. It's going to be crazy to look at the standings as we get into the stretch of the season. A huge season it's been as we get ready to wrap this thing up tonight. This huge win on the road tonight. Tomorrow we've got a huge show for you early, 3 p.m. Eastern in the afternoon. Draft show, 3 p.m. Rafael Barlow in the house. All you draft junkies assemble. We'll be talking about Fitz with the Knicks, his affinity with Julius Randle. He wanted him in Portland. Raf's a Portland fan, and when Julius's value was the lowest, he was, singing out for what a Knicks fan's talking about. So I'm going to give him his flowers with that situation. EJ will be coming to Raf with some draft questions about wings. The Knicks Dallas pick is around like 17. So what are your thoughts quickly on that?
Listen, this is an organization that's shown that no matter where they're drafting, this is a front office rather, not organization. This is a front office that's shown that it's possible to get value anywhere in the draft. So this is going to be an interesting conversation tomorrow with Rafael Barlow. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to learn about these prospects. I'm not going to pretend as if I'm an expert on most players we're talking about, but it's always exciting to see what's around the corner, what kind of talent can be amassed. And again, you never know who that person might be and how they might grow into a certain level or a certain echelon of talent. So tomorrow should be a really, really great show. Please smash that like, subscribe, tell everyone you know that they need to check out the buzz. Everybody, the streets are buzzing.
Yep, absolutely. EJ hit it on that. Salute to the best chat in the biz tonight. You guys showed out. Love the comments, the passion, the stats from Luke, the knowledge, the questions. We ride or die with this team, man. Knicks Streets assemble, and we deserve this success now. I'm happy for everybody, and we're still got to keep one eye on the future though, because it comes thick and fast with the draft coming up. The Knicks have the Dallas selection, which is looking like it's in the 17 range. So we have Tibbs still. Maybe he'll want it traded. Maybe you want to give Josh Hart 40 minutes, but it's still worth having that conversation in the streets. And have a great night, everyone. Many blessings. Peace.